The submitted material consists of 2 entertainment news reports tracking the record-breaking box office trajectory of the film Dhurandhar, The Revenge. The relentless pacing of daily box office figures in these reports creates a ledger-like reading experience that obscures the broader story of the film's momentum.
Yeah, it really does.
Because, we are dealing with a phenomenon of massive scale here. It's a film crossing the 1350 crore mark worldwide, you know?
Which is just a staggering achievement.
Exactly. But the way these numbers are structurally presented right now, it fundamentally dictates how the reader experiences that success.
Right.
Like, the text sequentially lists the daily drops and specific show counts in this incredibly granular way. It tells the reader Monday was 65 crore, Tuesday was 56.6 crore, Wednesday was 48.75 crore.
Just line by line.
Yeah, and then it goes out of its way to note there were exactly 19,270 shows across the country. Reading the piece currently feels more like watching a stock market ticker tape than experiencing the thrill of a blockbuster's run.
That is a great way to put it. It feels like accounting.
But wait, let me push back for a second. Isn't the whole appeal of box office tracking the granular data?
To an extent, sure.
Because, hardcore fans and industry professionals read these articles specifically to find out exactly how many theater screenings are running. Doesn't summarizing that data alienate the core audience?
I see where you're coming from.
Or at the very least, doesn't it undermine the writer's authority by hiding the precise math?
Well, there's absolutely a baseline expectation for accuracy in financial reporting, right? And the writer has clearly done the research to pull those exact figures.
Yeah, the research is definitely there.
But the weakness here is that listing every single daily figure, highlighting minor percentage increases like an 8% Sunday bump, and pinpointing precise show counts completely disrupts the narrative flow.
Oh, I see.
It forces the reader to mentally parse a spreadsheet of raw data rather than actually absorbing the magnitude of the film's success.
Right, it's just too much at once.
Exactly. When you present numbers this way, you are introducing a heavy cognitive load. The reader gets a string of declining numbers: 65, then 56, then 48.
And human psychology naturally focuses on the decay rate.
Yes, the reader starts doing mental subtraction to calculate the drop-off from Monday to Wednesday, rather than feeling the sheer, overwhelming impact of a film holding on to nearly 50 crore on a random Wednesday.
Wow, yeah, that is a massive midweek number, but it feels like a loss when you just list it as a drop.
Totally. And they get bogged down evaluating whether 19,270 shows is a lot or a little. Because without a baseline comparison, that specific integer is just noise. The momentum gets buried under the math.
So the numbers become an obstacle to the story rather than the foundation of it.
Precisely. A box office report shouldn't just be a data dump. It needs to be an editorial interpretation of the data.
Okay, so how do we fix that?
The suggestion for improvement here is to group the daily earnings into narrative trends that describe the movie's momentum.
Grouping them, okay.
Synthesize the raw data into a cohesive story of audience retention. Instead of treating every day as an isolated, volatile data point, the writer needs to look at what a cluster of days tells us about audience behavior over time.
Right, so we keep the numbers, but we control the framing of those numbers.
Exactly.
Let's give the listeners some concrete examples of how to execute that synthesis.
Sure. Instead of listing the Monday through Wednesday numbers individually, the 65 crore, 56.6 crore, and 48.75 crore, the writer could synthesize those into a single phrase emphasizing the stamina.
I love that approach.
So a rewrite could say, the film maintained a robust midweek hold averaging over 55 crore a day.
Yes, that is so much stronger. Right. It instantly gives the reader a massive, impressive anchor point. It sounds like a sustained victory, whereas listing the declining daily numbers makes it sound like the film is losing steam.
Even though those are historically massive midweek figures, you are actively controlling the narrative of the success.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can apply this exact same grouping principle to the weekend numbers too, rather than separating Saturday's 113 crore and Sunday's 114.85 crore into 2 distinct thoughts.
With those fractional percentage comparisons, right?
Right. Combine them to illustrate a massive, unified surge.
So rather than forcing the reader to compare Saturday to Sunday, the text could just read, the film experienced a massive unified weekend surge of over 227 crore.
Boom!
That communicates the sheer scale of the weekend without forcing the reader to pull out a calculator or parse a marginal 8% bump.
It creates a much more cinematic reading experience that mirrors the spectacle of the film itself.
It really does. The reader walks away feeling the weight of a 227 crore weekend. They feel the sustained power of a 55 crore daily average.
Because they aren't distracted by the minor fluctuation.
Exactly. By grouping the figures, the writer transforms isolated accounting data into a story of sustained audience demand.
Okay, so once you successfully group those daily numbers to show the sheer scale of the weekend surge, the immediate next question the reader has is, well, how does this massive surge compare to other historic films?
Naturally.
And that exposes the second flaw in the text, which is how it handles comparative milestones. Dispersing comparative industry milestones throughout the text dilutes the profound impact this film is having on the cinematic landscape.
It really waters it down.
Because the writer has actually gathered some incredible historic comparisons here. I mean, the text mentions surpassing Shah Rukh Khan's Pathaan and Prabhas's Kalki 2898 AD.
Huge milestones.
Right. It notes tying with Pushpa 2 for the fastest to 1,000 crore. It brings up international competition, noting the film is outperforming Ryan Gosling's Project Hail Mary.
Which is a huge deal for global context.
And it even includes the comparison to its own 2025 predecessor, the first Dhurandhar movie. But these records are scattered arbitrarily across different paragraphs and even different article updates.
Yeah, they're just everywhere.
But let me play devil's advocate again. Isn't sprinkling these records throughout the piece a good way to keep the energy up?
What do you mean?
Like, if every paragraph has a new broken record or a new fun fact, the reader stays constantly engaged and surprised as they scroll down the page, right?
Well, spacing out facts to maintain engagement is a common instinct, I'll give you that. But we have to look at it from the perspective of cumulative impact.
Okay, cumulative impact.
Right. The weakness in this approach is that scattering these comparisons prevents the reader from feeling the full crushing weight of the film's historic 1,361.95 crore run.
Because they're taking it in bit by bit.
Exactly. When a reader encounters these milestones one by one, separated by paragraphs of other text or grouped into separate updates, they basically reset their frame of reference every single time.
Ah, that makes sense.
By placing the Pushpa 2 speed record in one section and the prequel's 840.2 crore benchmark in an entirely different paragraph, the material fails to build a definitive thesis about the franchise's second-place standing among all-time Indian film franchises.
Right, it feels like a list of disconnected trivia rather than a historic coronation.
That's a perfect analogy.
Because if you are going to crown a new king of the box office, you don't hand them the scepter on Tuesday, the robe on Thursday, and the crown on Sunday. You do it all at once for maximum impact.
Exactly. When the milestones are separated like that, the reader just can't see the panoramic view of the film's dominance.
So what's the fix?
The actionable suggestion here is to consolidate the comparative data into a single, high-impact section dedicated entirely to industry milestones and legacy.
Bring them all together.
Yeah, bring all those shattered records into one room and let them speak to each other. We want to utilize an editorial strategy of stacking.
Stacking.
Right. Stacking forces the reader to confront the totality of the achievement simultaneously, which elevates the writing from mere reporting to historical archiving.
Let's look at concrete examples of how to stack these milestones. The writer can create a dedicated milestone paragraph that directly pairs the film becoming the joint fastest to 1,000 crore alongside Pushpa 2 with the fact that it effortlessly eclipsed its 2025 predecessor's lifetime net in just 11 days.
Oh, that's incredibly effective.
Right. That sentence does dual duty. It establishes unprecedented speed in the wider industry context and immediate superiority within its own franchise, all in one breath.
And we can take that a step further with the other titles mentioned in the text.
How so?
Well, we can group the eclipsing of Pathaan and Kalki 2898 AD in the exact same breath as its victory over international competition like Project Hail Mary.
Wow, yeah. That creates a singular, powerful statement of global dominance.
Exactly.
It tells the reader that this film isn't just beating domestic rivals, it is holding its own against Hollywood sci-fi blockbusters on the global stage.
It really raises the stakes.
Totally. By putting Pathaan, Kalki, and Project Hail Mary together in one dedicated section, you build an impenetrable wall of dominance. You are telling the reader exactly where this film sits in the pantheon of global cinema.
And that context is exactly what elevates financial reporting. I mean, the reader doesn't just want to know that a record was broken, they want to understand the scale of the wreckage left behind.
Right, they want the drama of the achievement.
Exactly. By building that dedicated monument to the milestones, the writer provides the historical context the reader is really craving.
Okay, so we have established the scale of the financial success, and we have built the historical context. But a massive number and a broken record are still just results.
Right.
We are missing the catalyst. Like, why did it happen? Isolating the plot details and ensemble cast information at the very end of the material strips the financial data of its vital human and creative context.
It's a huge missed opportunity.
Because right now, the material treats the art like an afterthought. Critical details like Hamza's dual identity as Jaskirat Singh, the multi-chapter structure dealing with the aftermath of Ranveer Singh's death, are all buried.
And the cast, too.
Yeah, the involvement of stars like R. Madhavan, Yami Gautam, and Sanjay Dutt. All of this is literally relegated to the very bottom of the page, grouped under a heading called Film's Journey.
Which practically begs the reader to stop reading.
But again, let me ask, if the primary goal of the piece is to report on a 1361.95 crore worldwide gross, does a plot synopsis really belong in the financial breakdown?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because the people clicking on this article want the math. They want to know the drop rates, the weekend surges, and the international splits. Does detailing Hamza's backstory just interrupt the hard data?
Well, this goes to the core of what entertainment journalism actually is. Entertainment commerce is inherently emotional.
Emotional?
Yes. A movie ticket is an emotional purchase. The weakness here is that treating the creative elements as an afterthought makes the financial report feel entirely hollow.
Oh, I see what you mean.
When you divorce the financial data from the emotional driver, you fail to contextualize the numbers. A box office number is literally a measurement of human desire to see a specific story.
That's a great way of putting it.
So isolating the cast and plot at the bottom fails to explain why specific language markets like the Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam splits are reacting the way they are.
Right, the numbers don't happen in a vacuum.
Exactly. It fails to explain why the preview shows generated a massive 43 crore right out of the gate before word of mouth even had a chance to spread. The financial data tells us what happened, but the creative elements tell us why it happened.
So if the text states that the Telugu and Tamil versions collected a combined 4.5 crore on a Sunday, that's just geographical data.
Just raw geography.
But if the text integrates the fact that R. Madhavan is part of the ensemble cast, suddenly that regional box office bump makes perfect, logical sense. The casting strategy is the direct catalyst for the regional revenue.
You nailed it. The suggestion to fix this disconnect is to weave the character dynamics, the multi-chapter plot continuation, and the cast appeal organically into the discussion of the film's financial achievements.
So mix them together.
Yes. Do not segregate the art from the commerce. Bring them together so they support one another, validating the financial data with human interest.
Let's pull Hamza's story up from the bottom of the page and demonstrate how to integrate it into the financial reporting.
Okay, let's do it.
When mentioning the massive 63 crore Hindi contribution on day 11, the writer should explicitly connect it to the narrative hook. A revision could read, driven by the audience's deep investment in exploring Hamza's hidden past and his true identity as Jaskirat Singh, the Hindi version remained the biggest contributor, pulling in a massive 63 crore on day 11.
That is brilliant. It gives the number a motivation.
Exactly. The audience isn't just handing over 63 crore. They are paying to solve a mystery. It frames the box office figure as a direct reflection of audience engagement with the plot.
And we can apply that same integration to the opening numbers.
How so?
Well, when highlighting the initial 43 crore preview numbers or the early international gross, the writer shouldn't just present the figures blindly.
Right.
Preview shows are purely driven by anticipation, not reviews or word of mouth. So the writer can attribute that immediate explosive draw to the combined star power.
Right, because people are buying tickets based on the poster, basically.
Exactly. Note how the anticipation of Aditya Dhar's direction, combined with the return of Sanjay Dutt and the intrigue of Yami Gautam's special appearance, fueled a 43 crore frenzy in the preview shows alone.
Wow. Yeah. Naming the director and the special appearances right alongside that 43 crore figure really explains the anticipation.
It gives it all the context it needs.
It tells the reader exactly what generated that initial burst of capital. This transforms a dry financial report into a comprehensive analysis of a pop culture phenomenon.
Yes.
The reader understands that the creative product and the financial result are inextricably linked.
Exactly. When you integrate the narrative and the cast into the revenue discussion, you respect the reader's intelligence by showing the cause and effect of a blockbuster run.
The numbers no longer exist in a vacuum.
Right. They become the footprint of the audience's emotional journey.
That's beautifully said. All right, let's briefly recap our analysis of these reports. First, we tackle the structure and flow of the daily numbers. Listing every minor fluctuation creates a tedious reading experience. So our actionable takeaway is to synthesize granular daily figures into broader narrative trends like a robust midweek hold or a unified weekend surge to clearly convey the film's momentum.
A much better reading experience.
Second, we address the significance and relevance of the comparative data.
Scattering industry milestones dilutes their impact.
Totally. So the solution is to consolidate those shattered records into a dedicated high-impact milestone section, stacking the achievements to firmly establish the film's historic legacy and global dominance.
Build that monument.
Exactly. Finally, we examined the completeness and focus of the material. Isolating the plot and cast details at the bottom of the text strips the financial data of its context.
It really does.
To fix this, weave the multi-chapter plot details and the ensemble cast appeal directly into the financial data to provide the crucial why behind the massive preview numbers and regional language splits.
It makes all the difference.
It really does. Well, we warmly invite the listener to take these structural suggestions, apply them to the material, and submit the revised work back to us for further review. Data without narrative is just a spreadsheet. Data driven by human motive is a blockbuster story.